In this lesson, I'll show you how to create a shirt without a pattern. We'll see how to trace a pattern onto a body and add detail layers to it. Let's get started. Start by clicking Line Avatar. Draw the front and back panel directly on the avatar. Next, include a seam line down the side under the armpit. You must create closed shapes while drawing, or the panels will error when you try to create them. Draw midway up the back, then across and under the armpit. We'll mirror and merge the right to the left later. Click the tool Flatten and select inside the lines you just drew. The created patterns will already be stitched together. The pattern is a good start, but there are too many segment points. We'll need to remove any that aren't directly on a corner. Select a point, right-click, and convert to curve point. And do the same for the remaining extraneous segment points. Now that the base pattern is cleaned up, repeat the process and draw the shoulder strap. Again, be sure to draw closed shapes when doing this. It's okay if the strap lines aren't perfect. They can be cleaned up after. Unfortunately, it looks pretty bent and not something we want to work with. Instead, create a new strap. Select the Rectangle tool, Hotkey S, and draw a thin rectangle about the same length as the bent strap. Delete the old strap and place a new one into position. This part of the chest has a single segment point, not wide enough to sew our strap to. One way to do this is to select the Smooth Curve tool, then click and drag on the segment point. We want to make a part here that's wide enough to sew our strap to. Change to the Edit Curve Point tool, Hotkey V, select and delete the middle curve point. Press Shift Z to see the line lengths. Right-click the new line, select Change Length and set it to the width of the shoulder strap. There's another point on the back that needs to be split. For this, I'll show another way. Select a line on either side of the point. Right-click Split. Any value is fine. Move the new point so it's horizontally aligned with the first point. Click the line between the two. Right-click and change length to match the shoulder strap width. Now that there are two flat lines, sew the shoulder straps to these lines. Select all, right-click, and select Symmetric Pattern with Sewing. Move anything in a place that needs it. Now switch to Segment Sewing, Hotkey N, and sew the front and back midlines together. If the pattern is inside the body, select it and move it slightly outwards. Simulate and see where everything falls. There, we have a good starting pattern for our shirt. Now delete the old lines. Click Edit Line, Avatar tool, double-click the lines and delete them. There is a lot of wrinkling happening on top of our chest. This happens because there's too much horizontal fabric here. We need to trim this down to make the garment fit better, but before that can be done, I need to clean up the lines by deleting any unnecessary curve points. Use the Edit Curve Point tool, hotkey V, to select and delete the curve points. In general, you want to work with as few points as needed to maintain a curved shape. With the extra points removed, move the point in along its line. Simulate and check. It's cut a bit low as well. Select all the points along the front top, including the bottom points of the strap, and move them up together. Add in a curve point for the bend around the armpit. And check to see how it's fitting. Do the same for the back. It's too high in the armpit. Select both side points and move them down. And move the front center points up. To remove some of the wrinkles, move the center point in. It's difficult to see being the same color as the body. I'll change the fabric to a darker color. Set the fabric to cotton Oxford. And to see the folds easier while we're working on this pattern, set the type to shiny. Fabric needs to be removed on the armpit side of the shoulder strap. Grab the point and move it in. Hold D while moving it to keep the rest of the line points where they are. Adjust it in until the wrinkles have lessened. And one final adjustment to the front point. Good, that's looking much better now. Clean up the pattern. Remove any curve points that aren't needed. Watch in the 3D viewport as you remove points to see how it affects the pattern. I'll make it a little bit longer too. The front and back centers will have to be merged. This means there can't be any curve points on these parts in order for their patterns to merge correctly. We want the same fit, so when we remove some curve from the center, we have to add it to the side. Grab all the middle points and drag them over together. Now delete the center curve points and you're left with a clean line to merge from. There's some wrinkling in the back. This is pretty natural and happens in part because of the avatar's pose. Now remove the center line points too. Good. With that cleaned up, we'll preview what merging the two sides together will look like. Save your scene before doing this. Select the front center line, right-click, select Merge. And do the same for the back. Select the segment point left over from the merge and convert it to a curve point. Move the point down to round out the curve. Yes, this will look good. Now undo or reload the scene to right before the merge and let's continue editing the pattern. Set the particle distance lower to see the folds better. Check the tension by clicking on the garment fit maps in the 3D viewport and select Strain Map, hotkey Alt-7. A lot of it's red, which means it's a bit tight. Select all the pattern pieces. Click on the Transform tool, hotkey A, then double-click the center point, and scale slightly larger. Still a bit tight. I'll scale a little larger. Run the simulation again and check your results. It's looking good, but too long now. Select the bottom lines and move them up. I'd like to see the geometry a little less tessellated on the folds. Select everything and drop the particle distance lower. I'll set it to 7. Select all the patterns, right-click, and select Quadrangulate. This will turn all the polygons from tris to quads, changing how the fabric simulates. Simulate and check the results. In Marvelous Designer 8, you can also use Beta Remesh. Select all the patterns again and right-click. Select Remeshing Beta. This turns everything into an even grid of points. From this, you can export a clean model for use in a program like ZBrush where you can further sculpt your garment. Beta Remesh will automatically turn off if you change the particle distance. Try some different fabric settings to see how it affects the wrinkles. Cotton twill or knit cotton jersey are good presets to try. It's still a bit long. I'll drag the bottom to be higher. But now the sides are pinched out. You can use the Line 3D Pattern tool to draw on the fabric itself to give you a guide on what to move or trim. Select the tool and draw around the part you want to trim off. Switch to the Edit 3D pattern, right-click the line, and convert to internal shape. Now you have a new line guiding you where to move your edge to. Select the leftover guide and delete it. Adjust manually to fit. The back needs some adjusting. Hold D and move the back center points down. Simulate and check the results. That's looking pretty good. Now with the base shirt made, next I'll add some ribbing. But first, let's fix any twisted straps. Select the strap, reset 3D arrangement, hotkey Ctrl F, or right-click on the pattern and select it from the menu. Run the simulation and let the strap solve into place. Set the particle distance to something responsive. Select the entire pattern and freeze, hotkey Ctrl K. I'm going to make the ribbing to be the same width as the shoulder strap. Click on the 2 lines around the armpit and right-click. Select Offset as internal line, 0.7 centimeters. Select the two patterns, right-click and layer clone over. Right-click the two internal lines and select Cut. Delete the other parts, we only need the thin pieces. Next, select all of the top lines and offset as internal line, 0.7 centimeters. Layer clone over, cut, and delete the unneeded parts. Move them into place, next to their corresponding patterns. Because they're cloned, they automatically have stitch lines. Select Edit Sewing Tool, hotkey B. Select all the stitch lines and delete. Manually sew the corresponding edges together. There are a lot of lines here. Take your time and sew carefully. And again for the other side. We're making good progress. Save the scene. Now select everything and set thickness to 2, and set the 3D viewport to thick textured surface, hotkey Alt 1. We want to make sure the ribbing is layered correctly. We'll manually set layer order to do this. Select the armpit pieces and set the layer to 2. Select the other ribbing parts and set the layer to 1. Simulate and watch the ribbing layers sort. Now we want to create a layer for the strap. Select the strap and layer clone over. Because of the clone over, the stitching is already done for us. Set its layer to 2 and simulate. Next, we need to merge the two sides together down the middle. I want to prevent the top of my shirt from moving, so I'll select the pin box tool and rectangle select all of the top points on my shirt. But it's not working. This is because the shirt is frozen. Unfreeze and select again. Every point you selected is now pinned. Determine which of the ribbing should be connected and merge their edges. Clean up any spots that need it. There's an extra line segment that isn't needed. Convert it to a curve point and clean up the line. Before we merge, it's a good time to save again. Select the two edges, right-click and merge. This action will break sewing, so be careful. Do the same for the back side. Identify the correct line edges and merge. There's a leftover point here again. Convert it to a curve point and clean up the line. Simulate again. The armpit side loop is now finished. Sew the edges back to the underlying pattern pieces. I've sewn my strap backwards and it's causing a tangle. Make sure to locate the correct sides before you sew. In the 3D viewport, click and watch for the blue spot in the 2D viewport to help identify which parts need to be sewn. In my case, the left edge of the inner pattern and the right edge of the outer pattern needed to be sewn together. Or, in this case, sewing in 3D will be easiest. Examine the area and look to see if there are any problems. On the bottom of the shoulder strap, select the stitching and delete it. This was causing the ribbing thickness to collapse on itself. Select the top stitching and delete that as well. Simulate again and the pattern layers pop into place. Looking good. Save again. Organize the pattern pieces. Select the left side patterns and delete. Select all the right side, right-click, and Symmetric Pattern with Sewing. Move the new side into place and sew the back and front center lines together. In the 3D viewport, click any pin and select Delete All Pins. Next, I'll merge the two sides together. But look around the model to make sure there are no problems before doing so. Good, everything looks fine. I'll save one more time before I merge the parts. Select the center line, right-click, and merge. And run the simulation. If everything looks fine, select the front and freeze. Hotkey Ctrl-K. Now select the back center line, right-click and merge. Before merging the next pieces, move the patterns next to their respective parts. Sometimes two patterns may overlay each other, preventing you from selecting one or the other. If this happens, select the visible pattern, right-click, and select Order, Send to Back. This will push the pattern piece to the bottom of the 2D viewport. You should now be able to select the other piece. This is useful in a situation where you want to lay multiple smaller pieces on top of a larger pattern. Select the back ribbing center line and merge. There's some bad stretching happening in the middle of my shirt. Vertically align the patterns and move the segment points up. Here, my lines didn't move how I wanted them. When I switched to the Edit Curve Point tool, I see that there are a lot of curve points. Select the points and delete. Clean up the pattern so the lines are straight. Let's sim and relax. Move the center points up to lessen the sharp angle on the back. On the internal line, select one of the center points and move it up temporarily. We can see that they are not connected. We need to merge these lines together. Undo or put it back to its original position. Select both points, right-click, and join overlapping points. Now select all 4 points, right-click, and convert to curve point. Adjust the new points until the line looks cleaner. It's a bit fat in the center. Adjust accordingly. Now turn on the strain map. It's a bit tight. Select the back and rotate it evenly horizontally. Double-click the center point and scale horizontally a little wider. Things are looking bunched up now, but the tightness around the back is better. Save again. Unfreeze and look for any trouble spots. Here, as I look over the pattern, I'm making a mental note of things to fix. Convert those center points to curve points. The sides are sticking out again. After deleting a couple curve points, select the side segments and move them in while holding D. And the same for the back. That looks better. The pattern's a little thick for the fabric I want. I'll lower this to 1. There's some wiggling on the straps near the armpits. If this happens, set all layers to 0 and sim again. Good, that fixed it, but some of the parts are stacked incorrectly. Select the outside parts and set their layer to 1. Looks like we have an extra segment. Click on the 3D pattern to identify where this spot is and zoom in on it. Select the line, right-click, and cut. Delete the extra piece. Do the same for the other shoulder strap junctions, deleting any unneeded pieces. Good, a lot better now. On the front ribbing, select the center line and merge. Everything is looking pretty good. Save again. We're nearly done now. Look over the pattern for any more problem spots. Simulate and pull the garment to arrange folds to your liking. You can adjust the shrinkage reft and warp to see if it helps you achieve a better result. The definition of weft and warp is shrink the horizontal and vertical lengths in the 3D garment window without changing the pattern of the 2D window. I don't want the shirt to ride up the back so much, so I'll adjust the friction of the avatar. Click the avatar and set the static and kinetic friction coefficient to 1. Now when I pull in the garment, it doesn't slide up so easily. Select the avatar again and turn on Smooth. This subdivides the avatar so low poly edges won't leave an impression on your fabric. See if any other fabric types provide a better look. I'll try cotton Oxford. The warp is a bit too strong. I'll increase the value to 95%. And some more adjusting of the reft and warp. Now pull in any wrinkle arrangement you want. The hardest part about this may be knowing when to stop. The shirt's looking really good now. Next, I'll see how it looks with remesh applied to it. Select all the patterns, right-click, and select Remeshing. Or, in the Property Editor, scroll to the bottom and enable it there. Sim again and see if it's an improvement. I'm pretty happy with this. I'll save again. We can stop here and use this as the final result. But as a final step, you can try simulating in different modes to see if anything is improved. Click and hold on the Simulate button. Change Simulation to Complete. This simulation quality will take longer, but should be more realistic. Click Simulate and check the results. Stop the sim, click and hold it again, but this time change to Simulate Complete Nonlinear. With this setting, the stretch of the fabric will be represented with more accuracy. Simulate again and observe the change. Pick from whatever simulation you like best. For this, my preference is Simulation Complete. Do any final adjustments, save, and we're done. Good job, you now have a finished shirt. As a bonus step, you can try adding ribbing around the bottom. This will be easy after what you've just learned. You can watch as I add this part or try it by yourself. Save off your final version or experiment further. This concludes the lesson. Good job.